The I See Dead Plants podcast shares the stories of people and plants, pests and pathogens, and the conflicts among them. Join us as we speak to the folks who attempt to solve complex problems with plants through pest management research. I See Dead Plants is an extension-based podcast created by the Crop Protection Network and the North Central Integrated Pest Management Center. Music written and recorded by fellow plant pathologist Sean Toporek and hosted by Ed Zaworski.
Welcome back to the I See Dead Plants podcast. As always, I'm your host, Ed Zaworski. You're tuning in to part 2 of my podcast with Jerry Barron, the executive director of the IR4 program. If you haven't checked out part 1, make sure you go back and check that out. But here's part 2. Thanks for listening, folks. I mean, tangentially related to crop groups, I don't know where coffee falls into it, but that's where I first heard about IR4. Actually, way back, we were talking before we started recording about when the inception of this podcast, and one of the first ones that I did was, I didn't interview anybody, I just did a bunch of research on coffee and coffee rust, and that's where I first saw the name IR4 and saw anything about it. So
yeah, we've been very much involved with the coffee rust, especially with our friends in Hawaii. They obviously have a huge investment in their coffee industry, and the huge concern of what that rust would do to the coffee. So we've been working with them to get some emergency exemptions, so they have some products, as well as looking more at the permanent approval of products to get it. So there's been some tools registered now, so they're not out there in a knife fight with a straw. They actually have something.
I'll use this as a transition into my next question, which is going to be, Jerry, what are like some success stories of IR4? And I'll add something else in there too, like what have been some of the biggest challenges you guys have seen at IR4?
Well, I mean, the sheer number of approvals in itself has been a tremendous success story. So over the 61-year period, we've supported over 23,000 registrations. Now, in full disclosure, there's not 23,000 registrations anymore. Some of the products that we did in the 70s, 80s, and 90s have been removed from market. But what we've been able to do is transition to newer products, safer products, lower risk. So now the growers still have adequate tools. So, the number in itself, and sometimes it's pretty mind-boggling that, we've been able to accomplish that many registrations in that particular time period. As far as success stories go, this is one I really like. So we're technology neutral in the sense of what we do. When I say that, it means that we want to be able to support conventional growers, organic growers, transitional growers, whatever they're doing. We've been trying to help the organic growers as well. And a few years back, Dow AgroSciences, which is now Corteva, developed a very unique product. It was called spinosad.
Okay. And
spinosad is an insecticide that was traditionally discovered as a bacteria from the waste product of distilling rum. So they found it, they discovered it, they developed it. We worked really close with Corteva or Dow and EPA. I mean, this truly was a partnership because EPA saw the advantage of this product, what it could do in controlling pests, and the safety profile of it. So they were very open to work with us, very open to work with the company to extend the registrations. And literally, we got all crops registrations for this particular product. Hey, this is great. This gave the conventional agriculture growers a new tool, a new chemistry, a safer chemistry that was very effective in controlling pests. Where I'm going at with one of the great success stories is we were then able to work to get this same product approved for organic markets. So lo and behold, the organic growers all of a sudden had a new, very capable insecticide that they could use to manage pests. And of course, during this time frame, organic production continues to grow, but they have tools. And that's something always want to remind people is organic and conventional, the lines between the two are very gray. When you have organic growers using a same product that's in conventional and vice versa, the lines between the two technologies continue to merge and get closer and closer together. Yeah, that's been a huge success of being able to get the organic production community a capable tool to manage a lot of their insect pest.
A question just popped into my mind along the lines of, you describing this approval for both conventional and organic kind of had a question pop into my head about, do you guys ever, it sounds like mostly what IR4 does is help get chemicals approved for the use on specialty crops. Do you guys ever delve into the area of like gene editing or anything like that? Is that outside of the purview as far as like testing for safety with the EPA and that kind of stuff? Or is that something that you guys have delved into at all?
Yeah, we're very much involved in gene biopesticide and then emerging technologies.
Okay.
So biopesticides, we've been doing this since 1982, where we've had a biopesticide component of IR4 that was going out there and trying to support this technologies, and we've made a lot of progress. Some of the products that are on the market that are working very successfully now have been supported through IR4. So we're very proud of what we've been able to do in the biopesticide area, what products we've been able to get through. Now, you asked about genetics. So as part of our biopesticide program, we have worked with transgenic crops. And I'll give you one great example. Everyone probably recognizes that one of the first genetically modified crops has been ring spot resistant papaya that was developed out by USDA in Hawaii and essentially saved the Hawaii industry from the virus. Now, we're not going to claim credit for that one, but we will claim credit for is the Hawaii papaya varieties are much different than the papaya varieties that are grown in the Caribbean region, such as Florida, Puerto Rico, all the Caribbean islands. They're somewhat different genetics. We were able to go out there and develop the data to support extension of that Hawaii approval into the Caribbean varieties, which essentially has saved the industry in that part of the world. So that's been successful. Another area in biotech that we've been successful is, again, it's USDA ARS technologies, but they developed a plum pox resistant stone fruit varieties. And plum pox will just totally decimate an orchard if it comes in. The policy right now is scorched earth. So if you get plum pox, they're supposed to go in there and I think within maybe 10 kilometers, remove any other stone fruit. It's terrible. But we have resistant varieties that we helped get through the approval process, and now it's approved. So that's been very helpful. What's really exciting is the emerging technologies that we're involved in. So I'm talking about the messenger RNA, RNA disruption, double-stranded RNA, that whole realm, peptide chemistries. These are, we're just starting to see the tip of the iceberg of these new products. And I think it's very exciting. I think you're going to see some of these very specific, lower risk products come into the market over, next 3 to 5 years. They're not broad spectrum like some of the things we've been used to, but they're very good in the pests they can control. And just this last year, a Colorado potato beetle product was registered for the first time of double-stranded RNA. Yeah, we're real excited, and we're working on that one, trying to extend these things.
Want to keep up with the latest integrated pest management research? Check out the North Central IPM Center's Pests in Progress webinar. Listen real time or check out the expanding library of past recorded webinars and keep up to speed.
What are some challenges that you guys encounter at IR4?
So right now, the thing that keeps me up at night is really the regulatory world.
Sure.
And I'm not throwing stones at my friends at EPA. I have a lot of respect for EPA. They're good scientists and they want to make the right decisions at the right time. But the courts have become very much involved in what they're trying to do. And almost of everything EPA does in the back of their mind is, are we going to get sued? Is this registration going to be removed because someone goes to some court and says, you didn't follow this and you didn't do that? And next thing you know, the effort's removed. So it's really stymied EPA because of all these continued lawsuits. What comes to the top of the mind is endangered species and endangered species mitigations of pesticides and how EPA is handling it. Again, they're trying to do their best, but they've basically have taken what has been going on for the last, I'm going to say 20 years and trying to make actions in less than 2 years. It's a lot of learn as you go, but it does have a lot of impact on the growers. We have a very close working relationship with EPA. Our colleagues there say keep your eye on the ball with pollinators because that's going to be coming up and resurfacing as a big issue in the next few months. So yeah, we're trying to track that. Pollinator protection is still a hot button. So endangered species, pollinators, endocrine disruption, all these aspects of the regulatory process is making my hair very gray.
It's dawning on me throughout this conversation, but especially with the challenges. I never asked you how many people work for IR4 because it's dawning on me throughout the conversation, like I said, that it must be a lot of people because there's a lot of different avenues to go down here. There's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of different crops. How many people work for IR4?
So in the office here at the national headquarters, we have about 25 people. And this includes the leadership, includes our study director team that manages all the regulated studies or studies that are required to be submitted to EPA. It includes a quality assurance unit group that by law are required to audit our data to make sure that the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, but more importantly, that the data that we submit to EPA is truly a reflection of the raw data that occurs in the field. We have our biology team here, and then of course, we have our grant management team here. So it's about 25 people here. I mentioned we have our 4 regional offices. 2 of the regional offices have an analytical laboratory, so they have more personnel there. Each of the labs are about, say, 8 to 10 people. Then you have at the other regions, you have a director, a regional field coordinator, a regional lab coordinator, and some more QA people. And then we have our research network, which includes the 21 field research sites that have, at least one senior scientist working there. Many of them have a technician to help out. And then you have in each state, now this isn't part of the total, I'll give you the total in a minute, but in each state we have a state liaison representative.
Okay.
That's not a funded or it's not a paid IR4 position, but someone that's supposed to be the eyes and ears to ensure that we know what the growers' needs are in that particular state. So if all of a sudden, say, a new disease of tomatoes pops up in, say, Ohio, that the state liaison in Ohio is supposed to make sure that we're aware of it and he or she is working with the scientist at in that area trying to develop solutions for that, and that way we could get registration. So when it's all said and done, we're about 110 FTEs nationally, but again, that does not include those state liaison representatives.
So potentially add 50. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, well, you could, but I mean, some states, the person may be doing quite a bit of their time with IR4, and other states, how many specialty crops are growing in Iowa, right?
There's some, but
yeah,
not as much, especially proportionately,
right.
as other states,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
As you can imagine, the state liaison in California and Florida are
Yeah.
a lot more busier than Iowa.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So, we've talked about a lot about what IR4 is, what IR4 does, who works there. What's the future of IR4 like? What are you guys looking forward to, or what's in the works?
Yeah. So I think one of the strong suits of IR4 is we always are capable and nimble enough to change. And we're willing to change with the times, change with the outside forces that are being put out there to make sure that we're still doing our basic mission, which is to support the growers. I mean, we've kept that mission intact since the beginning to facilitate registrations for specialty crop growers. So as long as we remember what that is, then we can change internally. So what is change going on right now? So I think we're seeing more of a need for efficacy and crop safety data today than we've ever seen in the past. Partially because the companies need more data because EPA's enforcing the requirements to have this data. Partially because some states, such as California and Arizona, actually review this data. And partially because the traditional system of where people would do some of this testing doesn't exist as it used to. So as people have retired, some of the applied researchers that have been focusing on going out testing simple crop protection products, they're not being replaced with those type of people. So we're utilizing our infrastructure to develop this data so these questions are answered. So that's one thing, and it's been a shift that's been going on now probably in the last 5-6 years at a pretty rapid pace. The other thing, and I mentioned it earlier, is we're seeing again a lot of this emerging technologies coming out and trying to fit some of these or fill some of the voids in pest management out there. So what we're trying to do is to figure out what do we need to do to help get this product to market. If it's just efficacy and crop safety testing, we're there to do it. If it is testing residues, but not your traditional chemical residues, it may be, testing RNA, how much amount, we feel that we could pivot to that and be able to collect that type of stuff. So, that's again a strong suit of the program is being able to adopt and move to what's necessary to keep the underlying mission, of new products for growers ongoing.
And I'm sure that you guys will have no problem continuing to roll with the punches, considering the track record of, like you said, the 60 years and the annual funding. So it seems like you guys are well equipped to keep adjusting with the times and the issues at hand. So, Jerry, before I move into wrap up questions, I like to stop and ask people, like, is there anything that we didn't cover about IR4 that you'd like to highlight for our listeners?
Yeah, I want to bring about one group that I have not mentioned yet, but they're very critical to the overall operations of IR4. We have a committee, it's called Commodity Liaison Committee, and it's really a group of stakeholders. We're up to about 31 now that are vested in IR4. They're not being paid by IR4, but they serve as a advocacy and advisory group. This group has been with us since the early 1990s and have been a very strong voice in Washington for IR4 to ensure that Congress understands the funding needs for IR4, and they're articulating what these are, knocking on doors of congressional reps, being the voice for IR4 because, as part of the university system, we're not allowed to go down there and lobby and ask for money, but they sure can because they see the value. And what's really heartwarming to me is over the years that this group, and there's people, rotate on, rotate off, but overall, this group is really takes ownership in IR4. They feel like this is their program. They feel like this is something that they need, and they're going to go fight like hell to keep it going. And to me, that's very heartwarming that we can be so supportive to a segment of agriculture that they're really drop down on the mat and wrestle for you. So it's really good. So that's the Commodity Liaison Committee. And they realized a few years ago that there was limitations of what they could do, because oftentimes they would be, flying in, once, twice a year to Washington, talking about IR4 to their colleagues, but they realized that there needed to be doing more. So out of their own money, not IR4's money, but out of the commodity group's monies, they went out and established what's called Friends of IR4. And these Friends of IR4, which we don't have any direct involvement in, they actually have hired a advocacy group in Washington that actually says, okay, you need to talk to this person on this date, meet here, and really coach the commodity people of how they can best use their time and efforts to be successful. And they have been successful. So overall funding for IR4 went from essentially a little south of $12 million in 2021 to now we're up to $15 million. The House has proposed another $500,000 increase for the 2025. Senate is flat, but the stakeholders, the Commodity Liaison Committee and the Friends of IR4, are advocating for $25 million. So it's really heartwarming to see that, what we do and how they've responded to that.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, the fact that they're doing it of their own volition with their own funds, it really speaks volumes.
Right.
Are you interested in reading the latest integrated pest management updates, such as current pest concerns, management tips, research updates, available IPM resources, upcoming events, and job announcements? Make sure you subscribe to the monthly newsletter, The Central Issue, published by the North Central IPM Center.
Well, at this point, Jerry, I like to do just a few wrap-up questions towards the end of the podcast to kind of, see what you think about some overlying things. I guess the first one is just, what should a specialty crop grower know about IR4?
Know that IR4 is here to help, and we understand their challenges, and we want to be able to help them be able to grow their crop and feed the world.
And I mean, you just mentioned Friends of IR4. Is there anything that specialty crop growers can do to help IR4?
Oh, absolutely. So you don't have to be a Friends of IR4 to help IR4. Of course, the Friends of IR4 are always looking for additional members, and I can send you some information offline to put in the show notes if you put show notes out, that who to contact and how to join that. More importantly, individual growers, let your voices be known to your elected officials. Traditionally, our elected officials are supportive of food. I mean, everyone's got to eat, whether you're Republican or Democrat, so food is probably the most nonpartisan aspect of it. Let your elected officials know that, there's this program out there that really is helping us with our true challenges, and appropriate funding's needed.
Yeah, that's a good message for a lot of things, I suppose, is if you've got something important to say, talk to your elected official, I guess, if you can, right? But yeah, I mean, my next question actually was going to be, how does IR4 serve to as a bridge between vegetable growers and government representatives? But perhaps, I mean, I guess, is there a way that you guys serve as a bridge? But perhaps they need, like you said, they should despite a bridge, go out and seek contact with them anyway. So,
well, funding is one avenue, but probably the area where we really serve as a bridge is we provide an advocacy, support for growers. So, oftentimes if EPA can't make a regulatory decision on a particular product because they don't have enough information, we will be the ones to go out there and try to help them get the information. We work pretty closely in concert with the USDA Office of Pest Management Policy. That group does a lot of the same things, but our our culture is let's try to help the growers get their tools that they need. So we'll help them try to do that, and whatever we can do by data or information, or we'll do it. So,
well, my last question, Jerry, before we started recording, I was kind of explaining to you, like, we think a lot of our listeners are probably academics or industry folks. My last question to everybody on this podcast is, if you had to explain IR4 and its importance to someone who's not one of those people, not an academic, not an industry, they don't know about crop production, they don't know about specialty crop production or any crop production really, other than they find food in the grocery store. What would you like to say to the public, and how would you explain IR4 to them?
I would say is we have a integral part in our food security system in the United States, and we're the ones to ensure, or we're part of the system to ensure that the food is available at a reasonable price. I guess that's my elevator pitch on that particular one, but it's fundamental. I mean, we all have to eat, and quite frankly, a lot of the crops we work on are the foods that we rhetorically eat day in, day out. And yeah, maybe some of us eat sweet corn every now and then, or field corn that's in the right stage, but we're more apt to eat lettuce and we're more apt to eat celery than corn.
Yeah.
Unless it comes in, of course, a Dorito shell or a chips. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was thinking about this before as I was writing up the outline I made for this podcast and before I started recording, it's like and you just mentioned, keeping the prices down of the fruits and vegetables that we eat directly, without a program like IR4, who knows, who knows where things would be without these other pest management options that specialty crop growers have because of IR4. So,
yeah. And I probably shouldn't say it, but I'll say it anyways. When there's certain documents that come out, like the Dirty Dozen, it's put out there to say, okay, don't eat this fruit or vegetable because it's got pesticide residues. The authors are just looking at raw numbers, and they're not looking at risk assessments, tolerances. Okay, that's fine. As a scientist, I can make that determination. I know that. But what scares me is the public when they're picking this up, and they're seeing is, well, I'm not going to eat strawberries, or I'm not going to eat bananas because this group says that it is wrong. So where they go to the store and they buy some chips and they buy some Doritos and they buy things. I think that we have to keep these things in perspective. The healthier food is still fruits and vegetables than Doritos. And no one puts out the Dirty Dozen on Doritos and other types of ultra processed foods.
Sure.
So, anyways, I'll get off my soapbox on that one now.
Well, I think I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, eat fruits and vegetables, folks.
That's, right. That's the message.
Especially if you're training for a marathon.
Right, exactly. Just not the night before.
Yeah.
And if you do it, you'll know why I said that.
Well, Jerry, that's the last question I have for you. At
Okay.
This point, I like to leave some time for people to have the floor themselves, make any acknowledgments you want to make, point people towards any resources you want them to be able to find about IR4, about specialty crops. You've got the floor.
Okay, well, thank you. And I just have to say is I've worked with a huge number of wonderful people, and everyone is just as passionate about this as I am. So for me, that again has been a blessing. I'd like to maybe verbalize here, but the IR4 website, where a lot of information can be found, is IR4Project.org.
And that's
IR4Project.org.
And that's the number 4, IR, the number 4.
Gotcha. Project, yeah, one word, .org. Look at the website. We have a lot of information on there, including a pretty comprehensive database that you can search what we've done, what we're going to do, so on and so forth. So check that out.
Yeah, I certainly have, and it will be in the show notes. So make sure to check it out, folks. And with that, Jerry, it's been great fun having you on here. I've learned a lot about IR4. I've learned a lot about specialty crops. I've learned a lot about regulation. So thanks for coming on.
Well, you're very welcome, Ed, and best of luck with your marathon. And be sure to let me know how you did after it's all over.
Yeah, I'll send you an email. At this point, I think I'm going to do what you said, and just I am a competitive person. That's my only fear is the day of the race, I get out there with all the people and I take off like I used to in cross country in high school. But yeah, I'm going to really make an effort to just enjoy it, not worry about the time, just make it to the end. So
save that race to the second one.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, with that, folks, thank you, Jerry. Folks, keep listening, and we'll see you next time.
I See Dead Plants bridges the gap between plant science research and the impact it has on our daily lives. It is brought to you by the Crop Protection Network and the North Central Integrated Pest Management Center, which are both partially supported by the USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture. For more information on today's topic or other pest management issues, check out our show notes, cropprotectionnetwork.org or ncipmc.org. Remember, this information is for entertainment purposes only. The statements made in this podcast should be interpreted within the limited context of the particular topics being discussed. Contact your state extension program for local information on pest management. For the full non-discrimination statement or for accommodation inquiries, go to cropprotectionnetwork.org/about. Thank you for listening to I See Dead Plants.